The most iconic and famous monster from Doctor Who's Rogues Gallery is the Dalek, a race of mutants sealed inside cold and emotionless tank-like shells. So when Doctor Who was dug up from the grave with 2005 Series 1, it was obvious that these terrifying villains would come back with it. This return came with an episode named simply Dalek, which sees Rose and the Doctor arrive in 2012 America, where the sinister foe lurks in the darkness of an alien museum. I've kind of made a video about it before and you've probably seen it. However, that video doesn't really cover a whole lot about the episode, rather just its role in the wider Dalek redemption arc of the Davies era. Also, it was a year and a half ago, so it's not exactly my best work. I missed a lot, so I want to take more of an in-depth look at it. So, as we all stay in the shelter of our own underground compounds, let's revisit Series 1's 6th episode, Dalek. Oh, and I'm gonna say that word a lot, so put that shot glass down. Dalek begins with the Doctor and Rose arriving in the underground alien artifact museum owned by Henry Van Statten, the egotistical billionaire who literally owns the internet. I like Van Statten, he's delightfully hateable, with almost no redeeming features. Corey Johnson does an amazing job in the role from the moment he appears on screen until the very end. I love Van Statten's first scene, where he walks along a corridor surrounded by overly obedient subordinates who tail him like leeches. He literally orders the wiping of someone's memory for slightly questioning him, but there's already someone there to take their place. Van Statten is a collector of alien artifacts without understanding their purposes, which leads to the Doctor explaining the purpose of the newest artifact, almost showing off. I love how Van Statten hates being undermined by the Doctor. He's comically egotistical and self-centered. Van Statten's glee at capturing the Doctor and finding out he has two hearts is great. You can practically see the dollar signs in his eyes. Van Statten is an incredible, albeit far-fetched caricature and satire of billionaire industrialists, and even though it's borderline overplayed, it really adds a lot to the episode. We find out that Van Statten has one living exhibit in his museum, the mysterious Metaltron, which he has named himself, as he cannot get it to talk even after torturing it. After finding out the Doctor has alien knowledge, Van Statten makes him meet the Metaltron to identify it. I love this scene. Even though the episode title spoils the reveal, it's such a dramatic and perfect moment. The Doctor is sympathetic and compassionate for the mysterious creature, until the moment it's revealed as a Dalek. Seeing his greatest foe strikes fear into the Doctor, making him beg to be let out of the cage. I love this because it establishes the terror of the Daleks, since the mere presence of one chained up Dalek is enough to shake the ancient, fearless Time Lord into begging for his life. It's really interesting to see the dramatic contrast between the Doctor and Rose's reactions to meeting the Dalek. The Doctor is initially terrified of it, but as soon as he realises it's harmless to him, he mocks it and tries to execute it. He has no sympathy for the Dalek because it's a monster. It's irredeemable. He has been fighting them throughout his entire life, seeing their evil and destruction time and time again. Even though the Ninth Doctor has been shown to be fair and compassionate, offering second chances, he hates the Daleks through and through. It hammers home just how bad these monsters are to warrant this extreme response. However, Rose has a completely different response to meeting the creature. Where the Doctor saw a chained up fascist monster obsessed with genocide, Rose sees a trapped, imprisoned and dying creature being tortured. She has sympathy for it because she doesn't know the wider context. It represents the new viewers, who have no reason to hate or fear the Daleks, because unlike the Doctor, they just see a machine being tortured. The most interesting thing the episode does is actually give the lone Dalek characterization. Rather than being a one-dimensional space Nazi like the classic Who Daleks, this Dalek is sympathetic and has layers. It's interesting and refreshing. The lone Dalek is the last survivor of the Time War, much like the Doctor himself. After previous episodes drip-fed mentions of the last great Time War, this episode reveals that the conflict was between the Time Lords and the Daleks. It adds nuance nuance and creates more layers to the long and storied history of the Doctor and his greatest foe. The lone Dalek has to grapple with the fact that its entire purpose in life is gone, and it's alone in the universe. It's the last of its kind. This makes it sympathetic to both the audience and Rose, even though the Doctor despises it. Rose's sympathy for the genocidal Pepperpot sets the events of the episode in motion. She convinces Adam to take her to the so-called Metaltron. The Dalek preys on Rose's compassion, manipulating her into approaching and touching its domed casing. I love how voice actor Nicholas Briggs manages to add so much emotion to a historically emotionless and cold villain. You genuinely feel like it's dying and has given up on life. It's such a nice touch, and I feel it deserves more recognition since it's easy to overlook. Since Rose is a time traveller, her touch reactivates the creature, causing it to break free from its chains, and it begins to rampage through the facility in classic base under siege fashion. The bulk of the episode is the lone Dalek going on a ruthless warpath, and I am all in on it. It is absolutely fantastic and shows just how terrifying these monsters can be. It also addresses and fixes long established flaws with them, such as the infamous toilet plunger arm, which had been the butt of jokes for decades. In a horrifying scene, it uses the arm to graphically suck the life out of a man. It's a great way to silence critics of the dated design. Similarly, the episode also addresses the monster's inability to climb stairs, which admittedly had been tackled in 1988's Remembrance of the Daleks, but that was unable to bleed into the public consciousness. It creates the sense that this is an unstoppable force, capable of brushing away any obstacle in its path. The sheer killing power of this new Dalek is shocking, because it's so much more extreme and efficient than its classic Who counterparts. Even now, the battle scenes of this episode are so effective, with bullets melting harmlessly through the monster's shields with no damage. It's a force of nature, with the ability to swivel its midsection and fire at people behind it, cementing the idea that it's truly unstoppable. It's no longer an evil Pepperpot with a whisk and a toilet plunger. It's an unstoppable, clinical killer. There's a great scene where the Dalek is faced with a significant amount of soldiers, but it turns on the sprinklers and electrocutes them all. It's the most clinical and efficient way to kill the soldiers. As the Dalek massacres its way through the facility, Rose and Adam have to escape. This adds stakes because we have a personal point of view in the danger, with one of our main protagonists under threat. These stakes are upped further by having the Doctor and Van Statten start sealing the lower levels of the compound. In classic movie and TV style, the doors close one by one as our characters run through. Even though it's a cliche, I like the drama and emotion as Rose doesn't make it. It's easy to look back and say, oh, it was obvious that she wouldn't die, but it's still dramatic and packs a punch. However, it turns out that the Dalek can't bring itself to kill Rose, which it plays off like, yeah, I totally can, I just want you as a hostage. Even though the Doctor complies with its demands, it starts having an existential crisis like me on a Saturday night when I'm sitting at home and all my friends are out having fun. What am I? What am I? I honestly adore the revelation that Rose's touch not only revitalised the Dalek, but also caused it to absorb her DNA, becoming more human. It adds so much characterisation to the Daleks. Towards the end of the episode, this horrific, hateful monster starts to find it harder and harder to kill, starting to question its own purpose. It can't even bring itself to kill the helpless Van Statten, despite him having tortured it endlessly. You understand just how much of an effect Rose's touch has had on the Dalek, as it ends up wanting to die because of its impurity. This tells us so much about the species, because even being slightly non-Dalek is enough to make them hate themselves for being unclean and impure. It shows the extreme, literal xenophobia of them, and the lengths they'll go to cleanse the universe of every other type of life. All the lone Dalek wants is freedom, and it blasts a hole in the roof, opening its casing so the mutant inside can feel the sunlight. During Classic Who, we rarely got a clear, good view at a Dalek mutant, but when this episode shows the small mutant inside its threatening golden casing, it makes it look vulnerable, which makes it sympathetic in a way. The Doctor still wants to destroy it, but Rose challenges him since he's become what he hates. However, the Dalek tells Rose to order it to die, so she does, leading to a really emotional scene that makes you feel sorry for a Dalek. It's time for the weekly segment where I tell you how amazing Eccleston is as the Doctor. Eccleston is a able to show his wide and varied acting range throughout this episode, especially when he first comes face to face with his legendary enemy, realizing what he's been imprisoned with. He starts off terrified, but then he's relieved and amused when he realizes he's safe. He shows anger when the Dalek tells him they're similar, but then sadness when he understands that it's right.
But there's no one else coming because there's no one else left.
Eccleston is also great during the climax of the episode, where he's desperate to kill the Dalek and end the Time War. You really feel his rage and grief, his pain at confronting one of the creatures responsible for destroying his people and his home. He's a completely different person during this scene, leading Rose to ask,
"What about you, Doctor? What the hell are you changing into?"
Dalek is the perfect reintroduction for the titular monster. It re-establishes them as a huge threat by showing us how ruthless and merciless one lone Dalek is capable of being. Not only does it fix some of the glaring issues that had made the monsters a national laughingstock, but it also does the unthinkable. It humanizes them. The lone Dalek is extremely hateful, mercilessly slaughtering a small army, but you feel kind of sympathetic towards its plight. All it wants is freedom, and it's achieving it the only way it knows. The episode is a simple base under siege story, but there are so many themes and little elements that make it a classic. It's great for the relationship between Rose and the Doctor, along with the Doctor's relationship with the Daleks. Eccleston puts in another world-class performance, and the entire cast do an incredible job. Aptly named, this episode is the perfect, definitive Dalek story, along with being a perfect Doctor Who episode. Therefore, it easily earns a shimmering, sparkling S rank on the Series 1 tier list. It's a bona fide modern classic. It didn't need a huge army of Daleks or some grand scheme to enslave the world. It's a character study that revolutionises Doctor Who's oldest and most iconic villain, and it's utterly flawless.